Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be using Paper Rose Studios Easter Village collection. This is a gorgeous collection, perfect for Easter or spring cards. I'll be using the 6x6 paper. I have the original Easter Village and also the coordinating Easter Village Basics. Both paper collections are also available in the 12x12 size. I have two of the coordinating embossed die cut packs, Easter Village and also Easter Village tags and tickets. The final item that coordinates with the collection is the cut apart pack. This is the Easter Village tags and tickets cut apart pack. There are other products that are part of the Easter Village collection, and I'll add a link to the full collection in the description box below if you want to check them out. So let's go ahead and get started with card design number 1. I have 7 different card designs to share with you today. I will be using some card sketches for inspiration. The first sketch is from Paper Play Sketches. It's number 49. And if you're interested in any of the sketches I use in this video, I share all of that information on my coordinating blog post. The link is in the description box below, or you can simply head over to KristieMarcotte.com. One of my favorite pattern papers in the whole collection is this beautiful Easter egg paper. So I wanted to make sure to feature it on a card. I'm using it for the background, and that piece is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. For the smaller square piece, I'm using one of the tone-on-tone green gingham papers, and I layered it on some white shimmer cardstock. Underneath the gingham paper on the right side, I'm adding a brown cardstock banner. Just tuck that in underneath. I'll layer the egg paper on dark brown cardstock, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. This card will feature one of the adorable image cut-aparts, this sweet little rabbit holding a carrot. I'll layer the cut-apart piece on some dark brown cardstock, adhere it on the left side of the green gingham panel with just a tiny bit of it going off the edge. For a sentiment, I'll add one of the cut-aparts, Extra Sweet Wishes. Now I am changing up the design of the card sketch. I moved the bunny image just a little bit higher. That way there's enough space underneath to add the cut apart sentiment. And before adhering the sentiment down, I did put a scrap piece of cardstock just on the lower portion. That way it stays at the same level as the bunny cut apart. For embellishments, I'm adding Love from Lizzie peel-offs. This is the mini circle style in gold. I'll put 3 in the upper right hand corner and 2 underneath the sentiment on the left side. So there is my finished card, and I did make 3 using this design. For card design number 2, the card sketch is from Cards TV. This is sketch 34. For the background of my card, selected this lovely purple and orange gingham paper. For the smaller rectangle panel, I'm using the tone-on-tone purple floral paper. Across the card, I'm adding a strip of very soft peach cardstock. I didn't have a long enough piece to go all the way across, but that's okay. I'll simply cut it in half. I'll adhere one piece down first, putting it along the edge of the gingham pattern paper. And I'm using the grid lines on my mat to try to get those 2 strips to look like they're one piece. I'll do the same thing on the other side. I layered both of the pattern paper pieces on some dark purple cardstock. I'll put adhesive on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. Now I'll put adhesive on the back of the floral panel and adhere it on the center of my card. Using Paper Rose's Stitch Circle die set, I cut out a white circle. I'll adhere it on the left side of the floral panel. And now I'll bring in some of the embossed die cut pieces. this beautiful wheelbarrow full of colorful eggs and flowers, and the sentiment, "Keep blooming." I'll pop up the sentiment using some foam squares. I grabbed the small and large foam squares from scrapbook.com in the 1mm thickness. Make sure to get good coverage so there isn't one area that sags. I'm using a mix of the foam square sizes, adding those tiny pieces in the narrow areas and the larger squares to fill in the main die cut piece. And before I adhere the wheelbarrow down, I'll attach the sentiment. Part of it will sit on the circle die cut and the right side will go off. So I will put some scrap cardstock behind the sentiment just on the right side. Now I'll put barely art glue on the back and adhere the sentiment down. And I'm putting it fairly low on that purple panel. That way it doesn't get covered up by the image die cut. And before the glue completely dries, I'll adjust that sentiment so it's nice and straight on the card. Then I'll remove the release paper from the foam and add my embossed die cut image. And I didn't notice until I was recording voiceover, but there are a few birds in the grass at the bottom, probably looking for some food. For a final finishing touch, I'll use more Love from Lizzie peel-offs, the mini circle style in rose gold mirror. I'll put 3 in the upper right-hand corner and 2 in the lower left-hand corner of the floral panel. So there is my finished card, and I did make 3 using this design. The other Keep Blooming sentiment is a cut apart, and then the bunny in the basket, the sentiment where bunnies bloom and flowers grow, that's also one of the cut aparts. Card design number 3 will feature this layered oval with cross die set from Paper Rose. I had to buy this set. I love the cross with the tulips at the bottom. It's perfect for an Easter card. Using the die, I cut it out from dark brown cardstock and also some green cardstock. I want the grass and tulips to be green and the rest will be brown. You could also cut out this piece from white cardstock and color in the tulips and grass. But I chose colors to match the pattern paper I'll be using on this card. With a pair of scissors, I'm trimming off the oval and cross from the green cardstock piece. Trying to be very careful not to accidentally cut off the tulips. And then from the brown die cut piece, this time I'm trimming off the grass and tulip area. Now the way I'm adding the die cut pieces on the card, I could simply cut out the tulip and grass areas and not worry about that bottom portion of the oval, but I decided to keep it there and I'll glue the 2 pieces together. So there are the 2 die cut pieces all trimmed. Now I'll put glue on the bottom of that lower oval portion and adhere the 2 die cut pieces together. For pattern paper, I selected this distressed looking design with soft sort of peachy brown colors and green. I thought it would look perfect with this cross silhouette image. I'll put glue on the back and adhere it on the center, putting it just a tiny bit higher toward the top. This pattern paper piece is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches, and I will be layering it on some dark brown cardstock. But first, I'm adding a sentiment and also one of the cut apart pattern paper strips. I selected the dark brown pattern paper, and this is one of the cut aparts. On the bottom portion, I'll add a scrap piece of pattern paper. I'm not adding any on the top area since it will be sitting on the bottom of the oval. Now another option, you could trim off the bottom of the oval, then you wouldn't have to worry about adding any scrap pieces of pattern paper. Before I adhere that piece down, I'll first add the sentiment. I selected Easter Blessings, goes perfectly with the cross image. In the lower corners on the right and left side, I'll add a small foam square. And in the center, I'm adding a scrap piece of cardstock and also pattern paper. I'll remove the release paper from the foam, put put barely art glue in the center and attach the sentiment. And I'm lining the top area of the sentiment with the bottom of the tulips. So if there are areas on the die cut that maybe you didn't trim cleanly, easy to cover up with the sentiment. Next, I'll add the pattern paper cut apart piece underneath, and I'm tucking just the top area underneath the sentiment. The cut apart strip was a little bit wider than this panel. I simply flipped it over, used a pair of scissors, and trimmed off the overhang. Now I'll layer the background on dark brown cardstock, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base. So there is my finished card. I love how this one turned out, and I did make 2 using this design. It can be hard to find Christian Easter products, so I love that Paper Rose has some pattern paper and also die sets. For card design number 4, the card sketch is from Sketch Saturday. This is number 772. For the background of my card, selected the green tone-on-tone gingham pattern paper. For the wider strip in the center, I'm using this dark wood grain pattern paper. I love that almost all of Paper Rose's collections include at least one wood grain pattern. They're one of my favorites to use. The featured pattern paper has boy and girl bunnies holding flowers and baskets. I layered that piece on some light green cardstock. I'll adhere the background on some dark brown cardstock, and that piece is 4 1/8 of an inch by 5 3/8 of an inch. Next, I'll add the bunny image on the wood grain pattern paper. Now I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. If you didn't notice, I love adding lots of cardstock layers to my cards. Since the majority of my Easter cards will be given to the residents at a nearby retirement home, I don't have to worry about keeping the card super flat. Although with this card, I'm not adding any foam dimension, so I would be able to mail it without paying additional postage. For a sentiment, I'm adding Happy Easter. Figured that went perfectly with all those sweet bunny images. I put clear double-sided adhesive tape on the back, and I'll adhere it underneath the wood grain pattern. To finish off the card, I'll add a small bow in the upper left-hand corner of the bunny pattern paper. And the bow image is from Paper Rose's Tiny Bows die set. Using the same blue cardstock color, I cut out 3 small circle die cuts, and I'll adhere them underneath the bunny pattern paper, trying to get them evenly spaced. So there is my finished card. I made 2 using the same pattern papers. Then I made 2 more cards. The other cards feature baskets filled with flowers and the sentiment, "Springtime in the Village." For most of my cards, I'm using a mix of the original Easter Village paper along with the Easter Village basics. It's so nice how they coordinate together. For card design number 5, the card sketch is from Cards TV. This is number 61. For the background of my card, I'm using some light green cardstock. In the center, I'm adding this wider panel with carrot images. This is a really cute design. For a little bit of separation and shine along the edge of the carrot pattern paper, I'll add a Love from Lizzie peel off. This is the pinstripe style in gold. I'm adding the narrowest width, and since I will be covering up several areas, I'm trying to use some of the smaller peel off scraps I have. Although I did have to grab a full strip since I ended up using up the last of the little scraps. I'll wrap the ends around the back. And before adhering it on the dark green background, I'll add the wood grain panel at the bottom of the card. And the wood grain piece is a little shorter than what's indicated on the card sketch, since I was almost out of wood grain paper at this point in the video. On the card sketch, it should be 1.5 inches tall, and I think mine is about 1 1/4 of an inch. So remember, when you're following a card sketch, if your pieces don't match up perfectly with the measurements on the sketch, it's fine to modify them with what works best for you. Before adhering it down, I'll add a scrap piece of pattern paper on the right and left side, just in the areas where it goes off of the carrot pattern paper. Then I'll put adhesive on the back and adhere it in place. Now I'll layer the background on some dark green cardstock. And when adding adhesive, I make sure to put some on the back end of the peel-offs. I'll put more ATG tape on the back, and of course I ended up running out. I'll use glue in the very center since it's sitting right next to me. I'll refill my ATG here in a moment. Now I'll add my card front onto a card base. This card will feature one of the embossed die cut images, this sweet little bunny behind a basket of beautiful flowers. I'll add the image on a stitch circle die cut. And before gluing down the circle die cut, I'll put a scrap piece of cardstock behind the circle, just in the upper area where it goes off of the wood grain paper. For a sentiment, I'm adding Hello Spring, and this is one of the cut-aparts. I have clear double-sided adhesive tape on the back, and I'll adhere it in the lower corner of the wood grain paper with just the very bottom going off the edge of that wood grain. And part of the upper left-hand corner of the sentiment cut-apart will be covered up with the circle die cut. Then I'll add the image embossed die cut on top, and I did pop it up using more foam dimension. For a final finishing touch, I'll add more Love from Lizzie peel-offs. This is the mini circle style in gold, putting 3 of the larger circles in the upper right-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and I did make 4 using this design. 2 cards feature the same pattern paper. The other 2 cards feature gingham pattern paper for those 2 strips on the side and a floral paper in the center. And the sentiment on the other 2 cards is a cut apart. Spring is in the air. Now moving on to card design number 6, and this is a very simple card design. Many of Paper Rose's paper collections include a full image design, although it's too large for an A2 size card, so I did trim it down to 5 3/8 of an inch by 4 1/8 of an inch. I'll layer it on some bright green cardstock. Then I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base. For a sentiment, this is one of the cut-aparts, Faith, Hope, and New Beginnings. This is the perfect sentiment for this beautiful scene with the church in the background, spring blossoms on the right side of the card, and there's even a sweet little lamb image behind the fence. I will layer this sentiment cut apart on the same green cardstock. Then I'll put adhesive on the back and adhere it at the bottom, leaving about 1/4 of an inch of the pattern paper peeking out underneath the sentiment. And that sentiment piece was a little bit too wide, so after adhering it down, I flipped over the card, used a pair of scissors, and trimmed off the overhang. For a little extra detail, I'll put 2 small banners in the upper right-hand corner. The larger banner, I'm using some light green paper, and the smaller banner that'll be on top, I use the same green cardstock I use for the background. I'll glue down the larger banner first and put a small scrap piece on the right side of that banner before adhering the smaller banner on top. If you don't like the look of the banners, you could leave these off. There's still the beautiful tree image on the right side. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. Now moving on to card design number 7, and this is my final card design. The card sketch is from OWH. It's number 197. I selected 2 pattern papers, this beautiful floral paper at the bottom, and a tone-on-tone brick panel at the top. I'm adding both of these pieces on some white shimmer cardstock. Didn't get that brick piece straight right away, but luckily I was able to lift it up. For a little bit of separation and shine between the two pattern papers, I'm adding a Love from Lizzie peel off. This is the pinstripe style in gold, the narrowest width. And I was able to use one of the scrap peel off pieces since I will be covering up the left side with a cut apart image. Now I'll layer the background on some dark brown cardstock, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base. The cut apart images and sentiments in the 6x6 size paper are fairly small. If you prefer them on the larger size, the 12x12 collection may be a better option. That way the cut apart pieces would be 3x4 inches. For this card sketch, the smaller cut aparts work just fine. I couldn't finish off my set of cards without featuring this beautiful cross image with the lovely florals. I'll layer it first on dark brown cardstock, then again on some light green cardstock. And even though my cut apart image is smaller than what's indicated on the card sketch, for each layer I still added an additional 1/4 of an inch. I will be popping it up using foam dimension. This time I grabbed scrapbook.com's 1/4 inch foam in the 1mm thickness. I'll add 3 strips on the back side, remove the release paper, and adhere this beautiful cross image in the lower left-hand corner. For a sentiment, I'm adding one of the cut aparts, Celebrate the Miracle of Easter. I have clear double-sided adhesive tape on the back. I'll remove the release paper and add the sentiment in the upper right-hand corner. And since it is a fairly long sentiment, I put it more on the right side, so the very edge is going off of the white shimmer layer. For a final finishing touch, grab more of the Love from Lizzie peel-offs, mini circle style in gold. I'll put 2 small circles on the left side of the cross image and 3 underneath the sentiment on the right side. So there is my finished card. I made 2 cards featuring the cross image, and the last 2 cards, one of them I used an embossed tag piece with this basket of beautiful eggs, and the other has the same image, but it's one of the cut aparts. And I added the sentiment, "You're extra special." Now here's another look at the 22 cards I made using Paper Rose Studios' brand new Easter Village collection. This is a beautiful collection, perfect for Easter or spring cards. And I love that Paper Rose included some Christian images and sentiments in the collection. Along with the 2 6x6 paper collections, I also used some of the coordinating embossed die cuts and one of the cut apart packs. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links in the description box below. Paper Rose is located in Australia and they do ship their products internationally, but you can also buy them here in the US, and I have links for both locations listed below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.